joined today by Philip Daffas, Managing Director and CEO of PainCheck. Philip, thanks for your time.
Pleasure, David. Good to be here.
Are you able to share a little bit about the company, but also an insight as to what drove the creation of PainCheck?
Dave, that's a really good question. And the problem that we found that we want to address was that 80% of people in aged care suffer with pain. But pain is poorly managed today. If you think about pain on a high level, if you and I go to visit the doctor, we can communicate our pain levels to them effectively. But it's still very much an art in terms of assessing levels of pain and how to treat it. But there's a group of people, such as those with dementia and cognitive impairments, who can't communicate their pain effectively. What we wanted to do was provide a better tool and a better solution for carers to address and understand their pain levels.
So now that we understand the problem, are you able to share a little bit about the solution you've created?
Absolutely. The solution we provided is a smartphone-based app that assesses pain through using artificial intelligence to assess microfacial features of pain, and then provides the carer with a guided checklist to take them through a 6-step process that identifies the level of pain and the severity of pain for their resident. And all the information is stored to the cloud and also then documented into the aged care management system back end.
Are you able to share your market strategy and how you're progressing to date?
Certainly, and look, to go backwards, the technology came out of Curtin University here in WA. It was 2 pharmacists who wanted to improve the way pain was managed in aged care. And in the last 2 years, we've gone from a pure concept, to a market reality in focusing on Australian residential aged care.
So what progress have you achieved over the last 6-12 months?
Well, late in 2017, we received CE mark, which is European, and TGA clearance as a Class 1 medical device. Although it's an app, it is a medical device. We launched into Australia, which is our initial target market, into residential aged care in late 2017. And by the end of 2018, we had more than 26 residential aged care facilities using our app, more than 2,000 beds in use, and we did 10,000 clinical assessments at the end of 2018. So 10,000 people were treated or assessed for pain using PainCheck in Aged Care Australia. And with new agreements already in place this year, that 2,000 figure of beds is progressing very rapidly towards 5,000 beds here in Residential Aged Care Australia.
And what is the business model?
It's a subscription business model. It's between $5 to $10 per person or per bed per month. And that really depends on size and volume and term. And that's for the residential aged care, which is business to business. And that's also a similar price for the consumer side, for the home carer. To give you a perspective on size, it's about 200,000 beds in Aged Care Australia, of which 50% of people live with dementia. And in home care, there's around 300,000 people live with dementia. So it's a large market in terms of dementia in Australia alone.
What's required to accelerate the take-up of the product?
Well, a couple of things. First thing is that we are now integrating with the care management systems in Australia, which are all used in aged care. We've already got 2 agreements in place and 2 more are being finalised now. With those combined, will give us access to 100,000 beds. And what that really means is that when we do a pain assessment with our product at the point of care, right by the patient or the resident, then that information is stored automatically to the back end of the care management system in the aged care. And that's going to really revolutionise aged care, and it's going to speed up our take-up. So that gives us access to 100,000 beds in Australia. We're doing a similar agreement in the UK, which will also give us probably access to 100,000 beds in the UK.
If 2017 was about development and 2018 was about proving commerciality, what is 2019 about?
Very good question. 2019 is really about accelerating the usage, not just in Australia, but also overseas. You're exactly right. In 2018, we proved clinical utility with residential aged care groups. Yeah? It's known now that PainCheck is a very, very good, usable tool for pain assessment in aged care. So 2019, we don't have to prove that again. That's out there in the marketplace. What we're also doing in 2019 is integrating with aged care management systems. We've already integrated with 2, and we've got 2 more we're integrating with, which will automate the documentation process. What that means is currently a pain assessment takes about 20 minutes to assess and document, and with PainCheck that will reduce it to about 5 minutes. What that means then, we can offer 2 things. 1, better clinical utility, and secondly, better cost effectiveness.
And in terms of the reach of those agreements, what's the size of their audience, and then how do you reach their audience?
Well, every residential aged care centre, and there's close to 2,500 of them in Australia, has a care management system. There are 4 or 5 companies that provide those. There's roughly 50,000 beds each. So we'll be covering more than 100,000 beds with our agreements by June this year, therefore accelerating the implementation process.
And is it a co-promotion? Is it a guaranteed use? How do you get the beds being used by the tool?
It's very much driven by the client. The client wants it. The care management system companies are working with us, and collectively we'll be co-promoting the service to all residential aged care.
Do you see this tool becoming the gold standard for this type of assessment in Australia and globally?
Absolutely. The gold standard as of recently was the Abbey Pain Scale, which was not just used in Australia but used around the world as a pain assessment tool for those who can't communicate. Jennifer Abbey, who developed the Abbey Pain Scale, is now on our advisory board, and she endorses PainCheck as the natural evolution. The analogy is very simple. Jennifer Abbey almost developed effectively the glass mercury thermometer, and we've developed the electronic version. We're not changing clinical practice, we're improving process. Better pain assessments, more rapid, more efficient, and therefore better for the patient.
So what then is the global addressable market for this type of product?
It's a very large market opportunity. It's a bit like the thermometer. Almost every doctor, every carer will be carrying around a PainCheck app doing pain assessments. We're focusing initially on the residential aged care. If you think of the Australian market at 200,000 beds in aged care, and at roughly $5 to $10 per assessment per month, that gives you roughly a $10 to $15 million market opportunity in Australia. Australia's 2% of the global market. If you round that up, that means a $500 to $750 million market opportunity globally, and that excludes hospitals, excludes GPs, and excludes home care and consumers. So it's a large market opportunity.
So for those investors who look very closely at 4Cs and financials, they'll notice you're in revenue and you have a product that is generating annuity revenue. Where does break even come in for PainCheck?
It's a good question. And look, if we were just an Australian company, in other words, we didn't want to go into overseas and we just focused on Australia and we stopped R&D on the kids app and everything else, then we've estimated around 30,000 beds in Australian residential aged care would bring us to break even in Australia.
So you've got 5 and you've signed agreements that give you reach to hundreds of thousands more. You're confident then of moving towards that break even point relatively quickly?
Absolutely. All the foundations are in place now to get there, and we are now on track. We've got the customers on board, we've got the partners on board, and we've even got international access. So everything's in place to achieve that number.
You touched on just then the kids app. Can you explain a little bit about the why, but also how that's developing?
It's an interesting point. If you think about communication, there are 2 extremes. There's the elderly who can't communicate their pain effectively because they're in cognitive decline. And of course there's kids who haven't learned to communicate their pain effectively or have not learned yet to speak. So we're also developing a kids app. This is for mums and dads at home who want to know if their children, if they're crying, if they're in pain, or if they're just hungry. It's developed, the app is available, it's about to start clinical trials on the east coast of Australia, and we plan to have it out in the marketplace by the end of 2019.
So I assume a similar pricing model and a vast addressable market.
Correct. Same pricing model. However, in this instance, we believe this will be more of a consumer product. It'll be used in hospitals, in special care baby units and neonatal units, but largely in the home care market for mums and dads. Similar pricing model, and it's 4 times the size of the dementia app. It's 400 million children at any one stage between the age of 0 to 3.
And can I ask a little about your global expansion plans?
Absolutely. We are about to go into the UK. We won a rocket ship award from the Department of Trade in the UK. They're helping us set up an operation and get into the UK market. We have potential partners there already lined up, and I'm actually off there in next week actually to start that process.
Who are some of the people who are going to drive this business forward, and what do they bring to the company?
Well, the team's a really strong team. We're very small. There's 7 people full time. We have lots of great technology consultants working with us, but the team is really well experienced. We have leading edge professionals both in technology, in sales locally here in Australia, in support services and clinical services. And my personal experience, I've done this at a global level with Cochlear and Roche. So my real experience is the global market. And to be honest, there's not a lot of companies in Australia that have people with true global experience, having worked in the US, having worked in Europe, UK, and now Australia.
What excites you about PainCheck?
I see the PainCheck as the opportunity to become the next vital sign. Yeah? Today, vital signs are things like pulse, blood pressure, temperature, respiratory. Pain should be a vital sign, but it's not. It's still very much an art. PainCheck is in the process of actually making pain assessments a science and not an art. And therefore, that could be used by everyone around the world.
So looking forward, what should investors be focused on from the company for the next 12 months?
Well, 2019 will be a great year. First of all, we're going to continue to extend our reach in Australia in aged care, and we're already expanding into hospitals, palliative care, GPs, and direct to the consumer. So we're really finalising the whole business model in Australia that we can use globally. We're now also entering into Europe this year. We'll start with the UK and other Commonwealth countries, such as Singapore and Hong Kong, where the Abbey Pain Scale is being used. And from that, we'll use as a base to go into Europe. The Kids app clinical trial will be completed this year. We should get regulatory approval by the end of the year, therefore sales to follow. And we're also doing the FDA submission for the adult app, which will mean we'll have access to the US in 2020 for the adult app. And finally, once we've got the regulatory clearance in the US, we believe the Kids app will follow as a predicate of the adult app into the US market as well. So we'll have global positions in 2020 for both products.
Exciting times ahead. Philip Daffas, thanks for your time.
Thank you.